Asking for love does not mean asking someone to be someone else. That's not love.
Beautiful. I can't wait to see it.
Oh, it's plus got sequins and feathers and come on, and numbers and...
Hi, Thom.
Hi, Krista.
It's so wonderful to be here in Stratford, Ontario, Canada with you. We're both here directing this season, and it's a special thing for me, and I think for both of us, that we've known each other for 40 years, and here we are.
40 years, best friends, yeah.
So it's an honor to be talking today about La Cage and your process as a director. And I'm looking forward to speaking about The Diviners with you later in the season, which I'm co-directing this season.
Love it. Weirdly, we keep getting shoved together. But like the universe puts us together at Shaw and at Stratford. Yeah, it's weird without anyone knowing that we know each other. I love it. The universe is like, I'm on your side.
Yes, and keeps us on the journey together.
Yeah.
Let's speak a little bit about La Cage. Well, a lot about La Cage, actually.
Yes.
La Cage aux Folles. It's happening this season at the Avon Theatre, which is the old proscenium arch space. There's themes that you've addressed of love and connection and messy family relationships. And also learning to accept somebody for who they are.
Right.
And I'm curious to hear about, the play was written in 1973 and now here we are in 2024. How did you address those themes in your directorial vision and bring it to today for this summer?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, anything that's written in a different era has different mores and different social attitudes. So the play, La Cage aux Folles, and it is, in fact, in English, even though the title's in French, but the story is it's a gay couple. One owns a drag club and one is the star of the drag club. So Albein is the star of the drag club, whose alter ego is Zaza when she's dressed in her full drag. She's fabulous. She's the star of the Riviera. And George has a son from a dalliance 24 years ago. And so they've been together for 20 years and raised this son. There was a movie made of it, a French movie, in 1978. And then, of course, people will know The Birdcage with Robin Williams and Nathan Lane, which was in 96, I believe. But the musical was written in 81 by Jerry Herman, who also wrote Hello, Dolly and Mame and, hit after hit after hit. The songs, you will recognize a lot of the songs. It's pretty spectacular. And Jerry Herman knows how to write a beautiful show. Toe-tapping and emotional. Love that as a combination. And so I wanted to set it in the year the movie came out because the attitudes towards homosexuality, even though, goodness knows, we are entering into some territory these days where it's again being villainized. It always comes in cycles. But at the time, even though France was much more open with homosexuality in terms of allowances and relationships, it still was fraught. And so there are things in the show where it's because of the era we're in that certain attitudes in the show happen. And so what happens is Jean-Michel, who is the son of Georges and Albein, he's getting married, but he's getting married to a girl who is, he is straight. He's getting married to a girl who's the daughter of a really right-wing politician. And so he comes home and asks his father, Georges, if they can pretend to be straight, because the parents are going to come to meet his parents. And so he asks that Albein not be there, but that his birth mother, who hasn't really been in his life, Sybil, that she come and play, if George will ask her if she'll come and play mother for the evening. Now, of course, today that is a horrifying ask because we know so much more. And there's much more, not even about acceptance, but there's simply a willingness or a demand to be who people are as gay or trans, and they're not. People are not staying quiet. They're not staying invisible. So it's not really something that's accepted even in the communities that they're in. But in 1978, that's real. And what Jean-Michel would have lived through with one gay parents as a couple, also drag queen, drag club owners. There's so much taboo around that 1978 still. That the ask is not, it's not an act of homophobia. It's simply a family dispute, and George and Albein realize what he's asking. And in fact, once we have the climax of Act One, when Albein finally gets told what's happening and has the most amazing number called "I Am What I Am," which is the anthem for anyone who's ever felt put down or put on the other side of the door, as it were, from society. In the second act, George and Albein make up early on, and then it becomes about them as a couple deciding together they're going to make this work. Albein will come as Uncle Albert, and Sybil will come as the mother, and then it all falls apart when Sybil suddenly can't come, and Albein takes matters into his own hands to create a mother figure for Jean-Michel, which leads to the absolute farce of the show. Really, it's a farce and also a family drama. So, sticking it in 1978, we understand in the moment why George would even consider the ask, because he understands how hard it would be for Jean-Michel to have what one might consider a normal, in quotations, life.
And that's where the love comes in as well, because the decision to do that dinner is underpinned by wanting his son to have a life he wants.
And to find, and one of the things that is in the show, but we're underlining, is that George understands if Jean-Michel, and Jean-Michel expressed it to him in a song called With Anne on My Arm. If Jean-Michel loves Anne as much as he loved Albein, he would have done anything for Albein. And that's where the justification comes in. And then, of course, what's wonderful is that there's no reward for that behavior. In fact, in the end, Jean-Michel, and his journey is, everyone grows up a little bit in the show. And Jean-Michel grows up and becomes an adult at the end when he realizes his behavior is the monstrous behavior that they have faced for 20 years as a couple. And he's become one of those people. And he realizes how wrong it is, and he apologizes to his parents and asks their forgiveness for being so selfish, and his words, for being so selfish and stupid. And we see him understand as a grown person that life is complicated, and it can't be about, asking for love does not mean asking someone to be someone else. That's not love.
Beautiful. I can't wait to see it.
Oh, it's plus got sequins and feathers and come on, and numbers. And
that's sort of where I want to go next, because we, in the 80s, when we were making theater, small and scrappy theater in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, on the prairies, you did a lot of drag as a teenager, and were, Mae West, Betty Davis, Peggy Lee.
Yes.
I had no idea who these people were. And you were my introduction
I'm an old
to
soul,
that.
Apparently.
Yeah, no, you had this introduction to this whole world. And you've had that world continue through your career with Outrageous by Brad Fraser.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit to the relationship between Albein and Georges, and your own relationships in life, and your relationship to sort of that world, that world of glitter and drag?
Of course. Well, yeah, I was fascinated. It's funny. I discovered the movie Outrageous, which starred Craig Russell, Canadian superstar drag performer, but like female impersonator, and he was amazing. If you can see the movie Outrageous, 1977, so great. I was a kid, but I was fascinated by. I think I've always been fascinated by other voices coming out of the same body. It's the cartoon in my soul. My partner always says, you're a cartoon inside. You see the whole world as a cartoon. So I find things weird and funny and hilarious. But I was fascinated by him having these voices and these people coming out of him, and the transformation that goes into the drag world and female impersonators and taking on these essences. And it was like this magical tickle trunk of wonder to me. And so dressing up and becoming someone else. I'm not just women, but I mean like working on Tales at Manitoba Theatre Centre that we did as kids in the theatre program, where I played a gremlin and I played some like weird things. I call weird, and I say weird joyfully. I love weird is interesting, not the norm. So I've always liked playing outrageous characters, no pun intended. And so I found my way towards drag because we started doing theater together, and I started to know people, and we in one of the theater companies we were in, Fantasy Theater, meeting Roy, and he was a director and an actor, and he did drag and did impersonations, and I thought, oh my Lord, this is my people. And I started to, for Halloween, I get dressed up in something and I had a new costume designers who would design something for me, and then we did this show called Caravan? No. Comedy with Style, but there's a title that we did for the Fringe, Winnipeg first Fringe Festival.
We did 1990. 1989, 87.
Was it?
Yeah, something
Don't
like
give
that.
the dates. How horrifying. And so I did that in Mae West. I did Peggy Lee. I did Nell Carter. And the joy that it brought people was also fascinating to me because people were fascinated by those kind of transformations and that kind of the chameleon quality, which I think has been part of who I've always been. Period. Drag or interesting or again weird characters. So I kept getting roles where I'd be in some sort of drag, and I understood what that meant. That crossing through felt very liquid. And then going to theater school, and Peggy Redmond, our singing teacher, because we ended up going to theater school. I was there a year ahead of you, and then I was the youngest person accepted into Ryerson until Krista came the next year and was the youngest person. I was like, oh, come on, I got 1 year. But I was thrilled that she was there, which was amazing. I guess we keep following each other. But Peggy taught me how to understand that gender is not this. Gender's this. You know, and to quote RuPaul, you know, we're all born naked and the rest is drag. Everything after just the stillness of your center is performative. And that we learn from society or how we're supposed to be. And so for me, the world's crossing, my whole career has been extremes of like hyper masculine men like Daddy Warbucks and Annie or Che Guevara in Evita. Or
ragtime.
Ragtime, yeah. Like these hyper masculine, what we consider, again, masculine in terms of terms we've used in the past. Now gender, of course, is much more fluid, but what we traditionally would call masculine. Or very feminine, playing drag queens or playing transsexuals. And it's like, it's all, I feel it all inside me. And I think part of that is, you knew my parents, of course, who now passed away, but my parents were such an interesting mix of what that was. My dad was black from Nova Scotia. My parents were a mixed couple, so white and my dad black from Nova Scotia. My mother was born in Canada, but her family were German-speaking Dutch Mennonite from Russia. So couldn't be whiter. And so my dad was so easy in his masculinity, again, quotations, old terms, was so laid back and easy. But yet still someone we consider masculine as a man, but didn't have anything to prove, didn't have issues with that, didn't have to perform his masculinity. He was just an easy inside his body. My mother loved being glamorous and feminine in terms of how she dressed, but bold, but yet she was how do I describe it? Like she was a virago of energy and what we could consider like a masculine energy in some ways because she was aggressive and not afraid of any man, never took a backseat to any man, didn't occur to her to actually bow herself down to any man in her life. And she was the first female president of the Winnipeg Business Association because she just was like, I've got things to do in this world, in this life. And so I saw her with the femininity on the outside, again classic femininity, which again, these terms are now going away in terms of how we use them, but in the traditional sense of that. But this wonderful, what we consider a masculine energy, how she looked at the world, which is simply her being present. And so I grew up with the feminine being outrageously strong in my world. And so I realized that my strength comes from my internal feminine because of how I understand the world and my dad's easy masculinity. And my partner says, like, I'm a blend of the two of them. And so walking those worlds was so natural to me, which is, I think, also why when people heard that I was doing La Cause, they went, oh my God, of course you're the person for this.
It's perfect.
And I think, there's a part of me that I understand the performative nature of drag, but also freeing nature and the revelatory nature of drag. You know, how it does not hide us for protection. It actually releases our inner protector of ourselves.
And I love that too, because as the story unfolds, the drag becomes the transformation for the son too.
Yeah.
Like that he accepts in the end, but it's through that, through that lesson or through that,
the lens of that.
The lens of it, exactly.
And it's not that he has a problem with who Albein is.
No.
Albein raised him and loved him, but ironically, I think that Jean-Michel wants the love that his parents have, that Albein and George have. He sees how real it is. And on a level, then we don't really see our parents till we're kind of older. We don't see them as human beings. They're mom and dad, and they're there at your disposal for what you need. And part of Jean-Michel's journey is he goes from a young man to a grown-up. And so I think it's just that he sees, because he wants what they have, but the way there is for them not to be who they are. And of course, his justification is just for the night, like just for one night. Then once it's clear and that everything's moving, then they can. I don't think he's thought ahead to how you're going to explain that after you've won them over, that it's all a lie. But it's that moment that makes fun drama and fun comedy. But it's not that he dislikes Albein; he loves him, but he needs a different behavior to get what he wants, and that's a youthful thing. Mm-hmm. That's the self-centered thing. But again, it's not a hate crime. It's actually just a young person who's pushing out against his family, and they're weird. We all have moments where our parents are weird. They like to dance in public. How embarrassing. My parents are drag queens and a drag club owner. Like, that's a lot in the 1978 if you're a straight boy trying to sort of fit in the world. So, yeah. Yeah,
the stakes of what he has to lose in this person that he's chosen.
Yeah.
If it all goes wrong, is his journey.
It's his future. He sees his future going away. His chance at love that's his own. He's loved by both his parents, but his own person. We all search in our life for our person, the person that loves us the most, that means the most to us, that offers us something that makes our life feel like it's filled with magic. We all want that.
Let's pick up on that, because there is a central relationship between Albein and George.
Yeah.
What do you admire in it? What do you see in it that you might have in your life? What's your connection to that relationship?
I know where you're going with this. You and I were talking about this the other night. It's kind of myself and my partner. I mean, not quite the direct version of that, but the kind of the fun, kind of slightly more outrageous character who's got this bubbly, free spirit, possibly a little dramatic, and then the other who is also really fun, but is more of a grounded figure, which is
I can relate to that in my life too.
Right? Well, yes, because I know who your husband is. And I love him, the sweetest man in the world. We both got very lucky, but they're also very lucky. But and what's great too is that why La Cage aux Folles, the musical, was groundbreaking, as well as the movies, but I think in Europe it's more acceptable, an openness that is more acceptable than in some ways than North America. That the musical on Broadway was I believe 81. It was the first mainstream show, certainly musical, that actually wasn't about gay trauma. It wasn't about gay people suffering. Like, there was love in the room. Yeah, there was the ask that had a moment of stress, but that was a couple. That was between the family. That wasn't the big picture. Homosexuality was at stake. But it was a celebration of love between two committed gay men, one of them a drag queen, in a loving 20-year relationship, which we had never seen in mainstream on mainstream Broadway or in theater, certainly in a musical. And it was so accepted. And so there's a great story about the opening night. They tried out of town in Boston, which is where they opened originally. And Arthur Laurents and Harvey Fierstein, who wrote the book, and also Arthur Laurents directed it, and Jerry Herman sat together holding each other. Jerry Herman was in tears before the show. He was so afraid that apparently Boston's a rather conservative audience, and especially in 1981. And they were so terrified that they would be booed and that they would hate the show.
Yeah.
And they watched as people were completely engrossed. They said, Jerry Herman talks about in an interview, he saw an older couple, straight couple, sitting in the audience somewhere ahead of them. And when one of the love songs, Song in the Sand, is sung by George to Albein, the woman of the couple leaned her head on her husband's shoulder, and he put his head on hers, and they burst into tears. The creative team burst into tears, and at the end of the show, the entire audience leapt to their feet, and they knew they had a hit. And it was from that day forward, whenever it comes back. There was a revival, the first revival, I forget now, on Broadway. It didn't do as well. I think it was the wrong time for it, and it was really overblown. A lot of people and a lot of costumes, and people think it was too much in the moment. But other than that, when it comes back, people kind of love the show, and it gets done places. People love it because of its message of acceptance, its message of love, its message of familial love, couple love, and this gay couple is at the center of it. And it's not young people who are the center, although Jean-Michel and Anne are lead characters. Jean-Michel certainly. It's this older, like in their 50s, gay couple who are the love center. They're the leads of this show, and we champion them. And I think even people who might have, let's say, mixed feelings about homosexuals, period, let alone a gay couple, it wins them over because it's not about a gay couple. It's just about a couple and a family trying to make sense of what it means to be in the world and making mistakes. And one of the things that I said early on in an interview, and it keeps coming back to me, is where there is love, there is grace. And if there's true unconditional love happening, we forgive because we know that no one's trying to hurt us, that we get to make mistakes and go, I'm so sorry. I understand and I'm so sorry, which is what Jean-Michel does. And without even a hesitation, Albein and George welcome him into their arms because it's their son. You get to make a mistake and you get to sometimes not actually come out of it eloquently or elegantly, and yet Jean-Michel does. He takes responsibility for it as a grown-up and tells Dindon, to his face, I have an apology to make, but it's not to you. It's to my parents. And when Dindon says, one of them might be your father, but certainly I see no mother here. And Jean-Michel says, I do. And he looks at Albein and in the room, the whole room kind of goes, because we've seen what they've gone through. And sometimes deeper love has to be earned through struggle. And when you come out the other side, the love becomes ironclad, and you know that you're safe no matter what happens, no matter what rocky parts you have to figure out in your own soul. The people that love you are going to be standing at the end of it saying, I'm here and I understand.
Because family's universal. It's
oh my God.
Everyone has it, no matter what form it takes.
Yeah.
And forgiveness too, and mistakes. Right?
We have to be allowed to make mistakes and grow.
Yeah.
Not everyone comes out of their mistake with grace, but even then, you knew my family. My brother was a complicated man, and you knew him really well. And he passed away of cancer a few years ago. But I loved him so much. No one made me more furious, and no one made me laugh as hard.
Right?
And I remember when he got ill, and he was in Winnipeg, and I kept going back and forth because I was working and doing things. But whenever I saw him after we knew what was happening, all the bad stuff went away. It would be laughter. I'd walk in and he'd go, hey, how you doing? And we'd just start laughing. And then he was in agony, but he'd be laughing and it couldn't stop the familial joy and all the things that we lived through together. That's all that mattered. And it was a great lesson in terms of, in the end, all that matters is the love that was there. The problems are problems. We're human beings and we go through all of that. But in the end, all that is left is love.
And La Cage has that joy. It has that chaos. It has that messiness. It has that, as you talked about, that farcical element.
Yeah.
That people are spinning out of control and, disguising
and
themselves.
plates are getting thrown and chaos. It's outrageously funny as well as being moving, crazy funny. It's a musical comedy.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
But what's deceptive is that they get you in with the comedy.
Yes.
And then suddenly you're like, that's hilarious. It turns on a dime. They're funny, and then suddenly it's so beautiful and so touching. But that's also, that's a Jerry Herman thing to me too. And of course, Harvey Fierstein, that wrote the book, who is so funny and so understands. What I love is that they don't shy away from messy.
Yes.
I know where there are some gay men, and probably not gay men, straight people too, who find the idea of this son asking his parents to not be who they are and not be here, is hard because, especially if you maybe perhaps if you're older and gay, you remember what it was like not to be accepted and to be forced out sometimes with violence. Mm-hmm. But that to me is exactly why I love the show, because it's a mess. But the point is, again, what Jean-Michel is asking for is not an act of violence. It's a family dispute. It's him not understanding. And yet we get this monologue from Jean-Michel in the second act. And it's right when the Dindons are about to arrive and Albein, they've surprised him, George and Albein have surprised him with the idea that Albein's going to come, his Uncle Albert, which was not what he was expecting. And he has this sort of breakdown where he explains what his experience has been as the son of two gay men. And he says, the beatings I took defending him, the embarrassment of, he'd want to walk hand in hand down the street. He's a straight boy in a world that doesn't favor homosexuality. So you hear a bit of the pain that he's lived through, which is valid. I mean, it's valid that that's his experience on the other side of that. And as a child, not knowing how to parse through what that means, that's going to leave some things inside you, even though we get it's very clear that Albein and George have been absolutely loving to him. But the scene is about that. Then, because after that, George says, but what about what he's done for you? What about what he's given up for you to have the most fantastic life? It mixed in there as well. So it's a family trying to find their way. It's not about a hate crime. And that's so important. But it is messy, yes. But families are messy. You know what I mean?
Yes, they are. The biggest full of contradictions and complex and
always. Talk to anyone about how's your Christmas with your family. They're like, it's always like, I love them, but and you go, fair enough. It's fraught. Our families are fraught, but that's part of what makes it kind of amazing, because it's how we also learn to face the world and work through conflict and understand that you can have difficult moments and you will be loved in spite of that, or because of that, and that's hard to learn and know. I think we get afraid that if we fail, we will lose love. And I was very lucky where my mother was ferocious. People were often afraid of her, but she was hilarious and very loving. And once I understood that most of that was her own kookiness, that wasn't I was doing something, I relaxed about it. But I never, ever, no matter how mad she was getting at us for something, never believed that she didn't love us and would do anything for us. And that ferocity also was on our side. If someone came at us, she was the most ferocious wildcat. The school, my brother was in trouble more than I was. I was a pretty good kid, but my brother got in a lot of trouble. Well, he was a troublemaker kind of, but he was a character. But a lot of it wasn't necessarily him doing anything. It was just situationally, and he was a black kid in a mostly white school, and all those things happened in the 70s. But the principal would, if the teacher had a problem with her brother, he'd say, "Oh, it's Brad Allison. Do you have proof that he did something?" They're like, "Well, no." He'd go, "Then don't call the mother. Don't call her. Don't call Mary Allison.
No,
please don't bring her in here. Please don't." They were like, "Oh, okay." So it's like, but all that ferocity,
love it.
when you know that's on your side as a family, that they will fight for you no matter how wrong you might be. She always said to us, she said, "Did you do it? Because you did it, tell me. But if you lie, I'll go to the mat for you. But if you lie to me, then we have a problem. But I will defend you if you tell me the truth." And that really landed in me. I think both of us. That matters. That's a love where it's like, I'm here for you no matter what, but don't give me garbage. Don't feed me garbage and then pretend. Let me know the truth, and then we can do anything. That's a huge thing to know, and I don't think all children know that. And this child in this show, he knows that, which is why he thinks he can ask them. Which is weirdly why he can ask them such an awful ask, that he knows that he can come to them with everything. It's a question you go, oh, that's awkward. And that becomes a problem. And then they sort of solve it. And then there's another problem, which is the family. They do come together to solve it together. And that's the point. It's like we can solve anything together. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but by the end, you feel the love that's been built and the new level of trust as grown-ups.
It's great. The question sort of started a little bit about just the relationship between Albein and George, but feels like your directing eye is in that family, is in your family, that family, that dynamic. And yeah, I love that. It's a nice surprise too, because
I think so.
Yeah.
People don't expect it.
No.
I'm thinking a drag show. Well, and the whole theme of the show is love, of course, but also family. It's them, but you've also Jacob, who is their butler, although he insists on being called the maid, which is also part of the comedy, but who you can tell loves them and they love him. And then there's the Kajal, which we haven't even talked about.
Chosen family, right?
Chosen family.
Yes.
How much we choose the people that actually make us feel special. Everyone wants to feel and deserves to feel special in their group of people, like they belong somewhere. And the Kajal, as they're the drag queens, there's the 6 of them who are the club performers along with Albein. Albein's the star, is Zaza, but they're the 6 ladies who are, can I remember all the names? Betel, Phaedra, Chantal, Angelique, Hannah, and there's only one of it. Betel, and I'm going through all of them. Angelique. And Mercedes. 6 extraordinary men who are playing these drag queens who are they carry such heavy lifting of the numbers in the show. They're fabulous and funny. We get to know them as characters and scenes that we see them talk about little things in bits and pieces. But they're this fantastic, ferocious group of people who have chosen this life, which wouldn't be easy, especially in that moment in time, but with love and care, and they can scratch each other and they can claw at each other. But in the end, when the chips are down, they're supporting each other no matter what, because they're their own family. And then you've got Babette, who's the sort of wig person who's in there, and we've added a character named Pierre, who's sort of the boy. He does the boy things. He'll walk Zaza out, and he'll play parts in their little skits and things. So, and we've really worked hard to make this family feel like a family. And then you've got the family of the Dindons, who is Jean-Michel's fiancée Anne and her mother and father, Marie and Edouard. And they're a little more dysfunctional. Like, the love there is not quite as clear. And that's, which is a wonderful lesson in not every family, just because you're straight doesn't mean that it's healthy. And what's also wonderful to balance that is you have the Renaults, who own the cafe, a couple, and they're a straight couple who are so loving and so wonderful and are friends of Albein George. So you get a view of everyone. That family looks so different for everyone. But at the core, you want it to be healthy in terms of you being there for each other. And so it's part of the Dindon's journey as well.
I love that the book sort of balances those two families.
Yeah.
In reflection.
Absolutely. And the great part too in our production is Juan Kieran and Sarah Jean Hosey play both the Renaults and the Dindons. So, which is for them as actors so great. In the first act it's loving, so wonderful, and they come again in the second act, and then they come back as the Dindons, who are so tight and so kind of dysfunctional, and you go, oh, how isn't that great? And for them it's a fun ride too.
Oh, how fun. Yeah. Lucky. The show doesn't get done that often, or it has
not in Canada.
In Canada, on Broadway, it's had revivals, and
all over the States.
And so the Stratford production of it is an opportunity to see it.
Yes.
In Canada, which is awesome, and with your leadership, I mean, my God, it's going to be something. Can't
knock
wait.
Wood. Something. Yes.
But do you have any thoughts around why it doesn't get done that often, or why it hasn't been done that often in Canada?
Absolutely. Well, yes. I mean, funny, here we are with the whole idea of homosexuality and homophobia. I think there's a feeling in Canada. I think it's only been done twice in Canada.
Yeah. I was surprised by that.
They've done it all, but it was done so few.
Just so few, yeah.
Well, I think people are afraid. It's different now. It's funny. I feel like more theaters should do it because there's such a, well, it's a mixed bag. People know RuPaul now, so it's such a huge following. Although, of course, in the States, there's such a pushback against drag, which is, of course, being used for all kinds of reasons. But it's still done often in the States because they know it's a great show and tends to do well whenever it happens. I think Canada, there's a fear, there's a conservativeness, I think, in terms of people use musicals to make money, often in theater, because they do, because people love musicals. And there's a fear of, if you do something that's not the norm, that's not a classic, perhaps, that people won't come. Yeah, there are so many shows like La Cage that are so funny and so beautifully written, and the music is spectacular. Jerry Herman's always going to give you a great show. There's a fear that people will be against it or be afraid to come to it, which is why I was so delighted and kind of surprised. So for Antoni to program, Antoni Cimolino is the artistic director of the festival. For him to want to do the show, I was delighted when he said, that's on our list of things, and we had talked about that, and he knew I was interested in that too. And in this moment in time, where we certainly have a lot of people coming from the States as patrons, and the polarizing world of drag right now, and also so many rules that laws are trying to be enacted to also take gay rights away. Like, we're in an awkward time. But again, it's cyclical. It happens all the time. It gets used as a political tool. It always has been. I was surprised when he said he wanted to do it for sure. I said, "Are you've read it, right? You know what the show is. You know that you're okay, cool." But delighted also that he was bold enough to decide it's a show that it's worth doing. It's a great show. And we want to stand behind the opening of any eyes that feel that they don't want to see this. Also, to be on the right side of history, which counts a lot when the world's watching what theater companies are doing, what they want to stand behind. It's not even a controversial show at all. There's no reason for it to be controversial. But the fact that he made it not controversial, he's like, let's do it. It's great show. You should do it. And I was like, oh, great.
And last year you directed Rent on the festival stage, a beautiful production.
Oh, thank you.
Everybody was standing and cheering like it was like being at a rock show, which is exactly what we want with live theater.
Yeah, sure.
And also Casey and Diana was on in the studio theater, and then the Richard II was reimagined by Brad Fraser and Jill Kiley with queer themes. So it feels like in a way that this show is just like a beautiful extension of what those conversations were last year.
You know, it's funny. There's been an idea. There was an era about 2008-ish, 9. There was a lot of talk about especially the big theaters, opening up racially the big theaters. And what happens when you talk about opening places up racially, or that extends to like female roles, that extends to gay roles, that extends now into the world of trans and non-binary. That, well, you know, it takes time to get the audience used to things. And I think it's a cop-out, really. Because really, once you make a decision, it's real. Yeah. Like, it all takes is someone to decide, we're just going to do this. Yeah. And then watch the fallout. And the fallout's never what you think it's going to be. There are going to be some people who will complain. But I think let's even say if it's 4% of people who complain outwardly about it, is that the 4% you're catering to? Are you encouraging that behavior? Or are you giving the 96% who want to grow and be part of the world and let everyone be in the same sandbox playing? Is that your goal? Because if that's your goal, then you are the future.
And we want the future at theater.
We want the future.
We want the future sitting in those seats.
Absolutely, because ages people pass through, and and people die off. That's just natural course of history. But I love that Stratford and Antoni decided that they wanted to be part of the future. Otherwise, we all die out.
Amazing. So we're about to go into previews for La Cage.
My lord.
Tell us about the process, the set, the drag
training
that the cast has undergone.
Amazing. Well, it was great. We knew that because, of course, not everyone does drag, and it's a very a specific world, but there's sensibilities about it. There's a world of expressing it. We were so lucky to get Justin Miller, whose drag alter ego is Pearle Harbour. Hilarious. Who is an amazing being, let alone wonderful drag queen and writer and performer. And he came in and did some sessions with our drag queens to walk them through what the vibe is and to find their own voice as drag queens, their own physical world, to make choices about who they are and for them. And then we also had, ironically, Dino Dilio, who was our makeup designer. Because drag is so specific. But Dino was the designer of Outrageous when I did it, the musical in 2000 at Cannes Stage. And he's the one who sort of taught me what drag makeup really was. And I've used his tips all these years. And we're looking for someone. I said, can we get Dino? And he was like, I'd love to. So he designed all of their makeup that you see. And then, of course, our wig department and our designer, David Boechler, who also did the set and costumes for Outrageous. And then when this happened, I thought, it's got to be him. I wanted a mature gay man who understood the era that we were in, who understood the glamour of it, and who was being impersonated, what the looks were, what the inspirations were, and what he has created, along with Brandon Kleiman, who I've used so many times. I love him as a designer. He's a problem solver. And it's how do we go through all the different places in the club, and then we're back in the house, and then we're at the restaurant. How do we travel to these different places and put it in all the drag world? And once we realized, the whole show has to be a drag show. So it's like a drag show in a drag show. So the whole set looks like the set is a drag queen. And so the minute you walk in, it's lights and glitter and so joyful when the show even begins, before it even starts. And then with David's costumes, because he had to create all the drag looks and looks for Steve Ross, the incredible Steve Ross as Albein. And then the wonderful hosty, yummy looks for Sean as George. And he created a world for us that is so of the era, but also the glamour that the 70s was fed by. It was fed by the silent movies and the golden age of Hollywood, like Mae West and Lana Turner. And that's the world that inspired a lot of them. Plus the younger drag queens would have more like the Chers and the Bette Midlers kind of thing. So he's found these worlds, he's put it all together in a way that is so glamorous. And Kim Purtell and those lights, like the whole stage is lights, literally, that are always alive for us. So like everything on stage is telling a story, but it's also, you feel the comedy in it, you feel the glamour in it. The opening number, which is basically George introduces it, and then it's the Cagel, the six of them, for 9 minutes. Now, that may not sound like a lot, but like a normally number is like 4 minutes long, 9 minutes. Three of them wear 3 costumes. 3 of them wear 4 costumes. Plus, there's another reveal of something at the end. There's tap. There's kitschy things. There's like 1920s glamour. We kind of go, what else do we show them? We've just shown them everything. And yet the show keeps showing you more. David keeps coming up with new and inventive things. We had such fun designing things for the show. It's just filled with such light and laughter and sense of humor and fun and beauty. But the ladies, I use as the Kajal, they took it all in. It's about finding your own drag queen. And with Justin's help, and of course I've done drag, so I was able to help guide them and suggest things. And Cameron Carver, who is our choreographer, who worked on Richard II last year and did amazing disco, these dances that were so genius. And I didn't know him, but I had seen that and something else he had done. I thought, who is this person?
Gorgeous work.
Gorgeous. His stuff, his choreography in the show is another character. It's so funny and clever and saucy and sexy. And then the Kajal are executing it with such skill. Finding those 6 people, plus our 2 amazing swings, was a joyful task because you had to be able to do everything. Can you fall into the full splits on the floor? Can you kick to your face? Can you do a tap number? It requires everything as performers. And then he's thrown the most wonderful things and so inventive. His ideas for internally in numbers, I sit in awe because it's so entertaining and so wildly creative. So this team has put together a show that I think the audience is going to have to catch their breath because between the laughter, the gasps, and the crying, they might need oxygen. I'm just saying.
Cameron's also working on the Diviners.
Yes!
And creating our world with us too, which is a very different world. And I have to say, I was just at the costume warehouse a couple of weeks ago. We were pulling costumes and we walked in and ours is 70s at times.
Right.
It travels time.
Yes.
And they said, if you're looking for sequins or glitter, we don't have any. It's all being used in Lacage. And they were serious.
They were serious. We grabbed everything we could. Yeah. We rated the set and again, Brandon, what he's done is so comical and tongue-in-cheeky. And there's a great bit that the set does. The set is a drag queen, but kind of in reverse. It does a thing where it looks one way in the first act, and then for reasons within the show, becomes another thing in the second act. That is so hilarious and backwards and ridiculous that even the cast has trouble not laughing. Yeah.
Oh, we need laughter right now.
Oh, we do. And again,
we need it.
Feelings and wonderful things.
Take us through the window of your directing process on the show, how you approached it and any obstacles or challenges or opportunities that came up for you.
Oh, sure. Yeah. We knew at the heart of it was the relationships. And that wasn't an obstacle, but it was really important because if you're going to make the ending when Jean-Michel comes to his realization and that question of what he's asking of them, to make that not hurt in ways that are going to be wounding to the public and to gay people, it had to be about the depth of emotion and love in the room. So we did a lot of work at the beginning with who's connected to who and how, and what's the nature of the relationship, and how do you know each other, I'm a huge fan of Blake Edwards, the film director who did the Pink Panther movies and did Victoria, was Julia Andrews' husband, and he passed away. But in his movies, he always used the people on the periphery, like tertiary and like even beyond that characters, like even the camera panning by and you'd have a woman eating soup, but something funny is happening. He built this world, and I was obsessed with building a world so that our ensemble is only, other than the Kajal, who are of their own, like a third lead in the show, there's only 5 ensemble people, and I made sure that each of them who play several characters had a full human being in that. So if you're watching the show and you come back 2 and 3 times, if you watch the ensemble, they all have these stories going on that are so funny and interesting and quirky. And I feel like that was a part of what helped build this world of community and helped us build who cares for who, that there's a sense of caring and taking care of each other, which is the theme of the show that it all sits on. And I think that's what's going to help make the problematic parts that we want in the show that creates the drama. It makes it kind of sing.
And you did your time in a chorus or in an ensemble.
Yes.
And so you know that that's important. It's
it
really
tells so much
important.
Story.
Yeah.
Ensemble can never take for granted what they add to a show. And if you take it seriously, it lifts the entire show. And I think with this amazing cast, I think the audience is in for the most extraordinary ride because they're going to get a bit of everything and walk out tapping their toes, maybe feeling a little bit lighter, a little bit understanding their own families better, and want to come back and see it, hopefully, 18 15 times.
I will be seeing it many times. You're my chosen family. I love you.
You know it.
It's such a beautiful way to spend an hour just talking about this show. And merde.
You're next.
But my curiosity about plays, I think, has always been the same. Like, why did they write that? Mm-hmm. Why did they write that line? Why that word? Especially with Shakespeare. Why that word instead of another one? Because you have to love the language. With Shakespeare, it's through the language.